I cannot believe we're already talking about the next set. I feel like I just finished the last set review. Regardless, Skybound Odyssey releases in October this year, and with it come 6 new heroes and a bunch of new mechanics. So I'm excited to talk about them. Let's check it out. Hey ho, what up? I'm just going to get right into it because I expect this video might run long. Our first hero, the Axiom hero, is Isaree and Pebble. Right off the bat, I love this art, and this giant golem companion is super interesting. It is funny to consider that maybe the hero is small and the golem is just normal size. Maybe the hero's name is Pebble. I know that's not how it's formatted, but it is funny to think about. Anyway, let's talk about the hero. So this hero says, at noon, if you are the first player, create an aerolith token in your landmarks. This says it's a permanent with when I'm sacrificed, resupply. It additionally has the effect of you can exhaust it, pay 1 to sacrifice it. As the resident Lindaway player, I am very excited about this card. This is just more sacrifice in Axiom, which I've mentioned before is one of my favorite factions. I just don't play it much. If you're not familiar, a lot of the cards that you play in the Lindaway deck, the traditional sacrifice deck, those are faction shifted or originally come from Axiom. Looking at cards like Boom, that originally was printed in Axiom and then faction shifted to Ysmir. And then everyone's favorite card, Moonlight Jellyfish, is faction shifted to Axiom. And a couple of new cards from the last set, Ysmir Nurse and the Grims, are also in Axiom, which are great sacrifice cards. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned how Ysmir Nurse, I wasn't a believer, but it's really grown on me now. And in the first set of Altered, there were a ton of uniques that came out that had this sacrifice a permanent or character clause that traditionally wasn't that great in Axiom. Sure, there was a strategy there. There was Moonlight Jellyfish that you could, repeatedly sacrifice, but this gives you a free permanent every other turn that you can sacrifice for more value. I'm super excited to play with this, and this will probably be the first deck I build from Skybound Odyssey. I wanted to call out, there's also one interaction that's not as obvious that I think is going to be really powerful with this hero, and that's with the permanent Armored Jammer. The rare Armored Jammer says that when it leaves the landmark zone, you get an additional sabotage. So it's not super obvious, but what you can do is you can play the Armored Jammer after you've created enough aeroliths or you've played enough permanents to go over your landmark limit, and then you get the sabotage from playing the Armored Jammer, and then when it leaves the landmark zone for being over the limit at the end of the day, you get another sabotage. I think that's going to be really powerful and something you're going to be looking to do. Armor Jammer is also just a great permanent to sacrifice. So I think that's going to slot right into this deck, and it's going to be an instant 3 of. I'm really excited to play around with this card. I think Armor Jammer is a really, really good card that doesn't see enough play already. Isaree and Pebble, huge thumbs up from me. Looking forward to it. I guess I didn't mention the exhaust and pay 1 to sacrifice me ability on this landmark. You're probably not going to be doing super often unless you just need to dig through your deck. But I can see a world where you're playing uniques that say when you sacrifice something, do a thing. And just paying 1 mana to sacrifice something to resupply is not going to be bad, especially if your unique is paying you off for doing something like that. Very excited about this card. Let's move on. Next hero, the Bravos hero, Sol and Halua. This hero was spoiled about a month ago, so I've had a lot of time to sit and think about this card, and I have a lot of opinions, so strap in. First, let's talk about the hero. So Sol and Halua, it says when you pass first, stop taking turns before the other players. I gain 1 quest counter. Then if I have 3 or more quest counters, create a Halua 2/2/2 token in your companion expedition. This companion is also a Leviathan token with, if your hero has 5 or more quest counters, I am gigantic. Now at first, this sounds not bad. I think this card is awful. Let me explain. So let's dissect this card. Now the first sentence says, when you pass first. To be clear, this hero does absolutely nothing unless you pass first. In Altered, passing first is usually not a good thing to do. Giving your opponent complete agency over the rest of the day is typically very bad. And then this card incentivizes you to play really high mana value cards so that you can pass first. I've talked about it in a previous video, but the World Championship qualifier decks, none of them were playing cards above like 4 mana. Additionally, this is the only hero of the now 24 card pool of heroes that your opponent has agency over whether or not your hero activates. Your opponent now has another angle of attack where they can deny you the ability to pass first and deny you your hero ability. Maybe they're already in a favorable position and they don't need to play anything else and they can just pass first. So right off the bat, I think this is really bad, this first line. But let's keep going. So when you pass first, I gain a quest counter. Then if I have 3 or more quest counters, create a Halua token. So this hero does absolutely nothing until you pass first 3 times. So let's think about this in game. It's not very common that the same player gets the opportunity to pass every turn. So this is pretty unlikely to be triggering and creating your token by turn 3. when you have 6 mana. Sure, you can do something inoptimal and just not spend all of your mana and pass so that your opponent can't keep spending their mana and pass before you, but obviously that sounds bad. But let's just assume the best case with this hero. Let's say you get to pass first the first 3 turns of the game. At the end of that day that you've passed first for the 3rd time, you've now made a 2/2/2 in your companion expedition, with the heavy downside of having to pass first the first 3 turns. Again, that's not very common. You're probably playing inoptimally to be doing something like that. If we compare this to the baseline, let's say Sigismar. Sigismar by turn 3 has now generated 3/3/3 worth of stats, and your hero, for having to pass first on all 3 of those turns, has only generated 2/2/2 worth of stats. Let's go to turn 4. Sigismar has now generated 4/4/4, and if you get to pass first, you've now generated 4/4/4. You are now dead even with Sigismar, with the heavy downside of needing to pass first. The real power from this card is supposed to come from having 5 or more quest counters, so that your companion gains Gigantic. You then get a 2/2/2 Gigantic. But as a reminder, you do have to pass first to get that companion at all. And then when you pass first and you make this companion token, it's incredibly susceptible to removal. These tokens have no hand cost, so you can off you go them, teamwork training, duel of grit. It's endless. Any removal spell can hit this companion, and you've already passed the turn, so your companion can just go away. If you've seen this article already, you might know there's a new mechanic called Rush that we'll get to in a little bit that is intentionally made for this hero, obviously, where you can do multiple things in a row immediately back to back, but I'll talk more about that when we get to it later. My intuition tells me that this hero is really bad. So unless there's some really powerful payoffs for passing first, or the rush mechanic ends up being really crazy, I don't expect this hero to see any play. Okay, moving on. Nadir Bubbles is the new Lyra hero. This hero says, I begin the game with 1 forest, mountain, and 1 water terrain marker. At noon, you may place 1 of my markers on target visible region. It gains the terrain of the marker and loses its other terrains until the marker is removed. This is a niche ability. There's already several Lyra cards that interact with regions and make them one type and not others. A few examples are like Persephone, Magic Beans, Will-O-Wisp, just to name a few. And a lot of these cards have zeros in statistics, so I actually think this is pretty powerful, especially if there's any way that you could possibly get these terrain markers back or move them around. I'm a little bit disappointed that this is an at noon trigger, so your opponent can freely play around it. I wish it was an exhaust so you could reactively put these terrain markers on regions, but I understand why. That would probably be a bit too powerful. Really interesting hero. I think it's going to be great in limited. This hero plays really well with most Lyra cards already. There's a bunch of zeros, like I've already said. I think this is just fine. This is going to be a cool hero, and I'm excited to see what other synergy they print for this hero in this set. It's a little weird that this hero only gets 3 activations throughout the game, unless there's some way to manipulate it in the set, of course. Neat hero, not really sure how to evaluate it yet, but I think it'll be fine. Moving on. Kauri Puff from Muna. At noon, if you're the first player, create a woolly back 1/1/1 animal token in target opponent's companion expedition, then draw a card. Right off the bat, this is the only hero that says draw a card that you don't have to do anything with right away. So as an example, Traced or Ren, they both say draw a card and then put it in your reserve. This hero just says draw a card on it. That is amazing. This is a really simple, elegant hero. Every other turn, you get to draw a card, your opponent gets a 1/1/1. I think drawing a card is so much more valuable than giving your opponent a 1/1/1. It's basically just like you're playing against Sigismar. I think this hero is great. Just a general purpose, very good Muna hero. Muna already has cards with effects like when your opponent draws or resupplies, get some benefit. So I'm excited to see in Skybound Odyssey if there's going to be characters that also do something when your opponent creates a token or a character joins their expeditions. I think this hero is great. Gets a big thumbs up from me. I'm excited to play around with this one. Muna is an underexplored faction for me, so. And here's the token for the new Muna hero, the Woollyback. Pretty derpy looking thing. This very goofy. I love it. We got the new Ortis hero, Zhen Zephyr. So at noon, if you are the first player, your hero expedition ascends. Until rest, it can move forward even if matched in its region's terrains by opponent's expedition. When 1 or more of your ascended expeditions moves forward, if there is no character facing it, draw a card. This is a cool hero because it incentivizes you to go all in on your hero side most of the time. You know I love a hero that says draw a card on it too. And now something that's not obvious at first, an ascended expedition can advance if neither player plays a character there, if they're both tied at 0/0/0. Since you are matching your opponent with 0/0/0, you can advance. So in some ways this hero sort of plays like Sigismar, in that Sigismar threatens an expedition every turn. Every other turn, this hero threatens an expedition if you don't play anything there. And the upside for this hero is you get to draw a card if your opponent doesn't play anything there. I also like the way that this is templated. It says when 1 or more of your ascended expedition moves forward, it says 1 or more, which makes me think there's going to be characters, uniques, etc. that can ascend expeditions, so you'll get to draw more cards with this than just every other turn if you advance an ascended expedition with its base effect. I think this is going to be a very powerful hero. It incentivizes you to go all in on one expedition, and then when you do, it rewards you by letting you draw a card. It also pressures an expedition every other turn if your opponent doesn't play anything there. So when you're not the first player, you can just leave it be, play to your companion side, make your opponent play to companion side, and you can still advance on the hero side and draw a card. I think this is going to be a very powerful hero, but what's new? It's Ortis, you know. Thumbs up for me on this one as well. The new Ysmir hero, Moyo and Silk. I absolutely love this purple and blue color scheme, so cool. This hero reads, when you play a spell with base cost 4 or more. Notably, we haven't seen that term base cost yet. You may exhaust me to create a Mana Moth 2/2/2 illusion token in your hero expedition. If the base cost was 7 or more, also draw a card. And then here in parentheses, it tells you what this base cost means. Reserve cost if from reserve, or hand cost otherwise. So base cost just means whenever you spend the mana on this spell, wherever you played it from reserve, that's going to be your base cost, or if you played it from your hand, that's going to be your base cost. So this hero just wants you to play big spells, and then you get payoffs. If you play a 4 or higher mana spell, you get a Mana Moth. If you play a 7 or higher mana spell, you get to draw a card. Notably, with the 7 or higher, you get the Mana Moth and to draw a card. Really simple hero. I'm a bit surprised that this is an exhaust ability because it's going to be very rare to play 2 spells with mana cost 4 or more unless you're very late in the game, right? My initial instinct is I like this hero. It gives a home to those Ysmir decks that wanted to play those big mana spells like Celebration Day and Celestial Blast, Winter Nova, those big flashy Ysmir spells. And my guess is that the way this is worded, if you have things to reduce the cost of those spells or play them for free, like the Katagir permanent, you still get the benefit from this card. I think that's a really cool avenue to go. I don't know if this hero is going to be super competitive unless there's some really banging spells in this next set, but I think this will be a really fun casual hero to play. Again, another hero that says draw a card on it. Always happy to see that. A quick summary of all the heroes now that I've gone over all of them. I'm a little bit disappointed that they didn't play around with the reserve and landmark slots. All of these new heroes just have 2 landmark, 2 reserve, just like all of the other 18 heroes that currently exist. I would have loved to see some experimentation there, but maybe it's still too early in Altered's life cycle. Maybe the next time we'll get heroes, we'll see some differentiation there. I think the best hero just on its own is the Muna hero, surprisingly. This just says every other turn, draw a card, your opponent gets a 1/1/1. Like I said, not a massive downside for just an unconditional draw a card. Let's hope this hero makes Muna an actual viable competitive deck. At the time of making this video, there have only been 6 people that have qualified for the World Championship qualifier, and not a single Muna has gotten close. That's enough about the heroes. Let's move on to some of the characters. Halua, Raging Leviathan. So this is the companion clearly for Soul, which is the Bravos hero that we talked about earlier. Let's see if I'm also disappointed by Halua. So 7 from hand, 7 from reserve, 5/5/5. This has Gigantic and Tough 1. At dusk, each character gains fleeting. So this includes itself. We can compare this to another 7 mana Gigantic character from the last set, Simur. I think is how you pronounce that. I do think Halua is better than Simur, but not by a lot, especially at the common. A single use 7 mana 5/5/5 Gigantic Tough 1 I think is just fine. You'll probably play this in draft and be happy with it. Each character gaining fleeting is pretty good. Your opponent has to commit to the board to beat a 5/5/5 on both sides, of course, since this has Gigantic. So they're incentivized to only play from reserve, really, since those characters already have fleeting. For a 7-drop, you kind of want it to win you both sides if you can help it. And this is pretty close to doing so. At least your opponent's not going to be thrilled to play characters into this card. Let's check out the rare. So all the stats are the same from hand and reserve. All the statistics, Gigantic Tough 1. What changes is at dusk, each other character gains fleeting. So this character no longer gives itself fleeting. It also has a support ability of discarding it to draw a card. I think this is way better. This is super cool because you can play it one turn, give all of your opponent's characters fleeting, and then play it again the next turn. I think it goes without saying that not giving itself fleeting is a massive upside to play this over the common. And then that support ability of just drawing a card if you don't need a 7-drop Gigantic Tough 1 is really good. You'll almost definitely play this in the big mana Bravos decks, like I'm expecting Soul to be, or Etsadi. This is a cool character. Now the faction shifted version goes over to Muna, and if you haven't noticed, they also added the color shift here to the faction banner, so you can tell this is a faction shifted version of the card, rather than having to look at the bottom and see this F like you did previously. But this is the exact copy of the rare from Bravos, and again, I think this is very good. This plays really well with Tasia, which just gives it a boost, makes it a 6/6/6 Gigantic Tough 1, and I think that's probably the only place you might play this card in a Muna deck, maybe in the new Heroes deck, but no, we don't really know what that's going to look like yet. Sweet card. It is still 7 mana, so I don't know how much play it'll see. I'm excited to play around with it in Limited especially. Maybe in the pre-release kit, I'll open a couple. Moving on, we've got the Koi Playful Leviathan character. So 4 from hand, 4 from reserve, 3/03 with Gigantic. Really simple card. It's pretty under budget for being a 4-drop. But it does have Gigantic. Gigantic is a really powerful keyword, so I'm expecting this card to be better than my instinct is telling me it is, but this common seems just okay. The art's cool, I love that color scheme. Let's check out the rare, which is still 4 from hand, 4 from reserve, 3/03 with Gigantic, but it has a new line of text that when you play me from hand, if neither of my expeditions is in mountain, draw a card. This card says draw a card, so immediately I want it to be good. However, at face value, I think this effect is pretty bad. It's not going to happen ever. So of all of the regions that can exist in the adventure zone where your tumult is, 5 of the 7 of those have mountain, meaning that when you play this card, your 2 expeditions would have to be exactly in the 2 expeditions that don't have mountain. That's obviously extremely unlikely to happen. You'd only really want to be playing this in decks that are changing those expeditions, because like I said, you're never going to get this draw card if you're just trying to raw dog this effect. But in those decks where you're changing the regions, I think this could be pretty powerful. 4 mana 3/03 that draws a card, that seems pretty good. Let's check out the faction shifted. So the faction shifted to Bravos is just the same as the common. A little bit disappointed in this. I think this card is just fine, like I said about the common. Gigantic is a good keyword. Maybe you're just going to end up playing Bravos Gigantic stuff. That sounds kind of fun. It's also a Leviathan like Halua, so kind of on theme to play it in the Soul and Halua deck. Just play a bunch of big Leviathans with Gigantic. Maybe that'll be good. Next up, we've got FarFetch 2.0 Character Robot. This is a 4 from hand, 4 from reserve, 3/4 with when you play me from anywhere, you may sacrifice a permanent. If you do, target character switches expeditions. So right off the bat, this plays really well with the new Axiom hero, Isaree Pebble. That hero gives you permanents that you want to sacrifice. For doing so, you would resupply from that permanent that you sacrifice. That's what the Isaree Aerolith permanent does. When you sacrifice it, you get a resupply. And then when you sacrifice it, you also get to have some pseudo removal, if you will. This is sort of like the hooked card, but on a character. The stats are slightly under budget, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for being able to manipulate my opponent's board state. And notably, you don't have to move your opponent's characters. You can also move a character on your side to another expedition. That's why Hooked is so powerful. This card is sweet. At common, you'll probably end up playing this in limited. However, at 4 mana, I don't think this card will see much constructed play. Looking at the rare, we've got 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, 3/3. Now we're talking. This has the same line of text as the common. When you play me from anywhere, sacrifice a permanent. If you do, target character switches expeditions. This version is significantly better in my opinion. Always happy with a 3 mana 3/3. This one just has additional upside. Sacrificing a permanent to get some additional benefit. And it's a May for sacrificing, of course. I'm really excited to play around with this card. I think it's going to be an instant include in that Isaree Pebble deck. As for the faction shifted version, this goes over to Ysmir, which as your resident Lindaway player, I'm very excited for. Another 3 mana 3/3, same thing as the rare. This also says when you play me from anywhere, you may sacrifice a character for permanent. That's huge for Lindaway, of course. We love an ability with an arrow where you can sacrifice, and getting access to Hooked in Lindaway is going to be pretty cool. I'm excited to play around with this card too. It'll be neat to be able to move your maw from your companion expedition. Moving on, we have the Bravos Harpooner, which is 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, 3/3, and this is the first new mechanic on a character that we've seen so far. So it says when you play me from hand, you may rush to sabotage. So rush means playing another card immediately. If you do, discard up to 1 target card from a reserve. It's a little bit weird that in this explainer text, this rules text, if you will, it explains what rush is and explains what sabotage is, when sabotage has been around for a year. I feel like you only need to put rush in here, but that's nitpicky. Anyway, I alluded to this earlier. I don't actually think this rush mechanic is gonna be good. With the rush mechanic, you want to play all of your cards that you have for the turn right away. So with the Soul Hero, this gives you an opportunity to pass first. You've already spent all of your mana. But like I mentioned earlier, passing first and playing all of your cards first is not good in Altered. You don't want to play with everything face up and your opponent has full agency over the rest of the turn. I honestly see Rush as a downside to a lot of these cards. I do think there are going to be some interesting or cool interactions with Rush where you need a hero with mana cost to play something like Duel of Grit. As an example, you could play this Bravos Harpooner and then immediately rush to Duel of Grit and sabotage something. That sounds pretty powerful on paper, but it does require your opponent to have played a character for you to have Duel of Grit and something to sabotage. So there's a lot of checkboxes here. This card is also understated for being 3 mana. It's only a 3 mana 3/3. With the current altered card pool, I don't think this is very powerful. Let's check out the rare. The rare is even more understated. At 3 mana 3/2, this now has the arrow effect of you may rush to sabotage. And weirdly here, they didn't put the sabotage rules text in the parentheses like they did in the common. They just have rush. So this, again, back to the nitpicky. Consistency, guys. What are we doing? I mean, arrow effect is typically the best version of an effect, but you're losing stats for, again, what I think is a pretty mediocre effect of rush. I don't love this. I'm not really sure how to evaluate these, honestly. And this is just the rare version, faction shifted right over to Lyra. In Lyra, honestly, I think you're better off just playing Little Mouse. We'll just have to see what comes of this rush keyword. Maybe there will be payoffs for playing multiple cards at once or something. I'm not sure. This is so weird. I don't think I like it. Moving on to the last spoiler card, we've got Armored Bird. So 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, 4/4/5. So great stat line here. But it has Defender. Notably, this is an animal, which is a character type that matters in Altered. There are several ways to interact with those. I don't believe at the time of making this video there's any way to give something in Muna Defender not Defender, like you can in Ortis and in other factions like Ysmir, with Mobile Armory and Sunisa, for example. But this is strong. I could see this in sort of a Muna control deck. This is going to be really good at blocking expeditions, especially with that new hero that gives your opponent a 1/1/1. This is very overstated for 3 mana. I think this could see some play, but it doesn't really do a whole lot, right? It's just a big body for cheap. Let's look at the rare. So the rare is a 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, 4/5/5, so actually more stats. It says, I am Defender unless I'm facing 2 or more characters. I think this card is great. What's cool is that this card is cheap enough that your opponent can play a character or 2 characters on one side, and then you can react by playing this card and overstat them for less mana than they've spent, probably. I'm a big fan of this card, but I do have a soft spot for Defender and massively overstated cards. Anchoring this is going to be powerful. Playing it with Tasia is going to be powerful. There's a lot of cards in Muna that anchor characters with hand cost 3 or less, looking at heroes like Arjun and various support effects that exist. I absolutely love the art too. This card's really cool. The faction shifted version goes to Ortis, and it's exactly the same as the rare. And like I've already mentioned, Ortis gets some abilities that can remove Defender from your cards, like Mobile Armory and Sunisa. This card is cool. I don't actually know if it would see much play in Ortis, but I like a big beefer, so I think this card is just fine. I like that it only has the stipulation of needing to face 2 or more characters. That's pretty achievable a lot of the time. So this surprise 3 mana 4/5/5 is going to be good, I think. Moving on to the new set's products. With Kickstarter products, you had a chance to open a golden booster approximately every 250 packs. Given the huge success of this feature in our first edition, we've decided to bring back this type of booster in a new format, special boosters. I'm very excited about this. When I've introduced people to Altered in the past, most of those people have wanted to crack packs, and I've convinced them to buy Kickstarter booster boxes if they can find them cheap, because they have a chance at these golden boosters and foils, and it's a lot more exciting than buying any of the other currently display or retail booster boxes. I'm really excited that they're bringing this back, and I can't wait to open my own special boosters. Like golden boosters, special boosters are no different in appearance and look like any other booster. They appear approximately once every 200 boosters, and once open, the party's on. Inside, you'll find 6 rare cards, 6 unique cards, and 1 foiler, instead of the usual probabilities, giving your collection or favorite deck a massive boost. So these are even more likely to appear than the Kickstarter booster box golden boosters, but they also don't have all uniques like the golden booster did. I'm curious what stores will do when these special boosters come up in draft. We've already talked about that a little bit at our local game store, and we're probably leaning toward the person that opens it would just buy another booster pack, because boy, would that draft night be really warped if there's a 6 uniques and 6 rares added to the pool. Let me know what you guys would do and if your store has already talked about something like this. I'm new to Altered. I just started in Trial by Frost, so if Kickstarter booster boxes is what people drafted with before, or people have drafted in that format before, did you guys have a solution for golden boosters? Let me know. Moving on. Pre-release kits are getting even better. Skybound Odyssey pre-release kits are also packed with new features. In addition to the 7 booster packs, the set of premium adventure cards, and the deck building guide, you'll now find the following items: 1 guaranteed unique, 1 acrylic first player token, and 1 punch out marker card. Absolutely love this. Getting a guaranteed unique is very exciting, gives you a reason to want to buy these pre-release kits. In the last set's pre-release, it was pretty common to not get any unique at all, and so it felt really bad if you played against an opponent who opened 1 or even 2 uniques, which did happen to me multiple times. So getting a guaranteed unique is super cool. It also gives you something to build around and look forward to. I also love these acrylic first player tokens. They're just a bougie accessory. Another reason to get excited about opening these pre-release kits. And then the last thing that I wanted to go over was this unique that was spoiled at the end here. This is a unique Halua, 6 from hand, 7 from reserve, 4/4/7. Pretty bad stat line. It says gigantic tough 1, so already what Halua has, and when you play me from reserve, you may immediately pass. If you do, sabotage. So 6 from hand, 4/4/7, gigantic tough 1 is actually not that bad, to be honest. 7 mana, 4/4/7, gigantic tough 1, a lot more negotiable to hate there. I'm interested to see if any other cards besides uniques are going to have this template of you may immediately pass. That works well with Sol and Halua, which I talked a lot of trash about earlier, because after you spend all of your mana to play a big thing like this, you're going to want to pass anyway, so it gives you an additional benefit. If there's a lot more cards like this, I can see Sol being better, but I still am really skeptical. All right, that about does it for Skybound Odyssey previews. I'm really excited for this set. It releases October 3rd. Pre-releases start the week prior in September. Let me know what you guys think about the new heroes and the cards in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.